Hey friends, Kim Wehle with A Little Law School. What is going on with all of these Trump trials? Let's face it, it's a little overwhelming and it's really disheartening, I must admit. We've got 4 trials that are at some point supposed to happen in the criminal context against Donald Trump. That's setting aside the civil stuff. And just friends, for those of us who don't know, the difference between civil and criminal cases, civil cases can only result in money damages or in what's called an injunction. It's basically an order by a court to do something or to stop doing something. So there is a civil fraud case brought against Donald Trump in New York. The Attorney General wants money and wants basically his businesses to stop. There's money damages and an injunction. In a criminal case, you can go to jail. So the big difference between criminal and civil cases, you can go to jail, number one. Number two is that it's only the government that brings them. The government is the only entity that can actually prosecute and put someone in jail. All right, so we have 4 criminal cases against Donald Trump, 2 in federal court. Federal court is the nation's court. Federal court is the only kind of case that a president can pardon. I've got a book coming out in September, friends, on pardons. So that's a big looming issue for the 2 federal cases against Donald Trump. Did he try to pardon himself prospectively when he was in the White House, number one? And number 2, if he wins re-election, will he pardon himself in those cases? He can also just cancel them because he'll be in charge of the Justice Department. Let's just start with the federal cases. One is in Washington, D.C. in federal court against Donald Trump just by his lonesome. No one else is with him. And it's 4 charges relating to January 6, 2021, that horrible day, the insurrection at the Capitol. Donald Trump has moved to toss the entire case out, to throw the entire indictment out, saying that he's got immunity because he was president. What's immunity? It's basically a get out of jail free card. It's a get out of everything free card. It means I'm untouchable. I'm above the law. I'm the king of America because I'm president. So I can commit crimes because I was president. I was president, so I can't be touched by the law. The DC Circuit, the in-between court between the trial judge and the Supreme Court at the federal level in Washington, D.C., ruled no last week. You don't have complete immunity. Of course they ruled that way. It's a duh, friends. You don't need to be a law professor to understand that. That being said, he is pledged to appeal that to the Supreme Court. He's got a pretty friendly Supreme Court. Monday, the Supreme Court was asked to stay that trial so that it can hear that appeal. We're waiting to see if the Supreme Court stays that January 6th trial pending the appeal on this bogus immunity issue. And if it takes up the issue, what it's going to rule. I think it's going to rule he has no immunity, but the trial's scheduled for March 4th, and delay, he wins if he stretches this past November. So that's just a horse race, friends. That's the issue in the January 6th case. The second case is in Florida, and that involves the classified documents. There are 40 counts pending against him in the state of Florida for basically stealing classified information out of the White House and then obstructing justice, directing one of the 2 co-defendants in that case, there are 3 defendants in that case, to move the boxes around, knowing that the FBI wanted them back. And then also allegedly asked another co-defendant, to actually delete some of the videotapes in Mar-a-Lago demonstrating that kind of obstruction. The FBI had to go all the way to a court to get a search warrant to get the documents back because Donald Trump not only took this classified stuff, but lied about it. Most lawyers think it's a pretty slam dunk case against Donald Trump, but he has a really friendly judge by the name of Aileen Cannon down in Florida. She has very little experience, and she showed her hands early on in the case. She was appointed by Donald Trump, and when the FBI executed the search warrant, she did this silly thing, basically appointing what's called a special master to oversee the FBI, go over all the documents. This was completely unprecedented. I'm a law professor. I read her opinion. It was a C or a C plus for a law student. It was really terrible. And the appellate court, the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals, slapped her down. And it is not a liberal court, friends. This is a pretty conservative court. So she really tarnished her reputation, but she's also been making some problematic rulings in that case. That case is set for trial in May, but because it involves classified information, there's a statute Congress has passed that basically says, listen, if the government needs to use classified information to prosecute someone for misusing classified information, that stuff might go before a jury. It might get into the public sphere. It might get on the public record. You don't want classified information disclosed even in a criminal trial. So there's a statute called CIPA, C-I-P-A, that requires the judge to basically balance the interests of America against the interests of prosecuting Donald Trump, to make sure that nothing gets disclosed that shouldn't be disclosed, which means if Donald Trump gets access to it, she's got to make sure that he doesn't leak it and basically make things harder for the witnesses, etc. Very, I think, disturbingly, last week, she ruled that some of that information that he has can be made public, even though Jack Smith has said that it involves actual witnesses. That, you know, let's face it, there's a gag order in DC in the January 6th case against Donald Trump that got stayed, but we know that there's a gag order in New York by the Manhattan judge because, you know, he has his MAGA folks go after people. He's a bully. He threatens them. It's scary. It actually can put you, if you're a witness in one of these cases, or if you're the judge's law clerk in New York, or if you're Jack Smith, or if you're one of the prosecutors, or if you're one of the paralegals that were helping the prosecutors, if Donald Trump gets your name, your life is potentially in danger, not to mention just a nightmare. So Aileen Cannon, the short of it, didn't really respect the government's position that these witnesses need to be protected. So I think the big issue in that case is Jack Smith going to try to get her tossed because she's conflicted. We don't know, but she's slow walking that too. So right now it looks like that one might not go to trial before November. Bummer. Then you have two state cases, one in Georgia, massive racketeering conspiracy case involving 19 defendants. A few of them have already pleaded guilty, including admitting one or more of them, admitting to actually tampering with voting machines in Georgia. So the big lie is that the Republicans are somehow about election integrity, at least the ones that were indicted in Georgia. That case is not going to go to trial before November. There's this drama around the prosecutor, Fani Willis, having an affair with one of the other prosecutors. That's a sideshow that's really unfortunate and frankly shows some pretty bad judgment on the part of Miss Willis. But even without that, it's way too complicated a case to go to trial before November, which leaves the case pending in Manhattan, not the civil case involving fraud, but there's one involving Stormy Daniels way back when. Remember her, the adult film star that Donald Trump allegedly basically paid hush money to keep his affair with her quiet in the lead up to the presidential election in 2016. The Manhattan district attorney has criminally charged him with election fraud relating to that hush money payment. That one is scheduled to go to trial the end of March, and that frankly is the one that actually might go to verdicts before November, even though it's probably the smallest potatoes of some pretty big potatoes against Donald Trump these days. Keep in mind that a third of Republicans who went to the caucuses in Iowa said that they would not vote for him if he gets convicted, if he's a felon. And it's kind of mind-blowing, but actually in America, if you're a convicted felon, you can't vote in a lot of states. It doesn't keep you off the presidential ballot under the Constitution, but if he's convicted, he would not be able to actually vote in certain parts of the country. He wouldn't be able to run for state or local office. So that's what I have to say for y'all today. I will keep you posted on things. This is Kim Wehle, A Little Law School. Thanks for listening.